here. I have my zipper that I've prepared, and I let the glue dry on this one, so it's now sitting there with its strange looking feet at the bottom. And I have my front exterior panel, just my front exterior panel. And I am going to lay my zipper centrally along the top edge of my pouch. And I'm going to lay it so that it's right sides down, so the zipper pull is underneath. And I'm going to lay it centrally. Now you can measure and make sure that your zipper is central, or you can eyeball, which is what I generally do. Once I'm happy that it's central, so there's the same gap on either end, I'm just going to use a couple of clips to hold it in place. Because sometimes when you sew a zipper in, they do, well, I call it creeping zipper. They kind of move along a bit. You start off with them centrally, and they somehow manage to just jiggle along a bit. I don't think it's because zipper tape is stretchy. I just think I don't know why it does it, but it's annoying. So clip it in place and you'll find that it stays where it needs to be. So if I hold that up, you can see it's exactly the same at both ends, and the zipper is right sides down, so the zipper pull is underneath onto the top straight edge. Now I'm going to use, I'm not putting a zipper foot on because I've got quite a narrow foot, but you could put a zipper foot on if you feel that you want to. I'm going to undo the zipper. I'm putting the zipper pull right down to where the tab is, and get this bit out of the way because I can't tell you how many times I've sewn over that. That's really annoying. And I'm going to stitch along the edge of the zipper using a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. A scant 1/4 inch seam allowance is just less than 1/4 inch. Be careful as you stitch over those zipper teeth. Now for me, I make sure that the edge of my foot is sitting, let's just see if I can make that a bit bigger. No, I can't, okay. The edge of my foot is sitting right against the teeth on my zipper. And that helps me to sew in a straight line. I'm just pulling the clips off as I go. Don't go too quickly. There's no prizes for getting to the other end first. When you get down towards where the zipper pull is, stop. With your needle into your fabric, raise your presser foot. Take the zipper pull and pull it up so that it's the other side of your presser foot. If you don't, your line of stitching will go wonky as your foot goes past that zipper pull, and you'll be kicking yourself. Just a couple of back stitches at the end to make sure that your stitching is secure. And you can see, let me just get rid of the threads. I hate threads. And you can see that that's stitched in place. That's quite a good straight line, and that's because my zipper foot was, my presser foot was touched up against the edge of the zipper teeth. And I'm using white thread because it makes it visible for you. I don't always use white thread for this sort of thing. So we have that in place now. We're going to take our first lining panel and we're going to lay it right sides together on top of our exterior panel, matching up both of the sides. And we're going to clip it in place. Now I'm going to undo that zipper again because I want my zipper pulled down at the other end. There's a lot of jigging around with zippers. So I'm just going to line that up and clip it in place. And it really does pay to use clips. I have to say, when I'm sewing normally, I use clips much less than I do when I'm doing them on the videos. But I think it's important that you do use the clips. It will help to keep everything in place. And then we're going to stitch all the way along from one end to the other, again using that same scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. Back stitch a couple of stitches at the beginning. Slow down when you go over those zipper teeth. And you should be able to, even with your finger, you should be able to feel where those zipper teeth are. And let me just, I can't move this any further along, I'm not sure why. Sorry, am I making you feel a bit seasick now? You should be able to feel where those zipper teeth are and keep your foot pressed up against the side of the zipper teeth. Now, if you have a machine with a really wide foot, it's worth using a zipper foot at this point. My feet on my machine are actually quite narrow, so if I don't need to change them, then I won't. And again, you can feel when you're coming to the zipper pull. So stop just before with your needle in, lift up your lining, lift up your presser foot, and you should be able to put your hand underneath and just move the zipper pull out of the way so you can continue with your line of stitching and it will be straight. So that's the first half of our lining secure. You can see we have this little tab up here of zipper which was left over, and we can trim that off now. And then on the wrong side, if you've used foam, if you've used fusible fleece, there's nothing to trim off. You can trim off that foam that's in the seam allowance. Now, to do that, I use my larger scissors. I put my scissors sort of almost flat onto the foam, and I just literally snip along the edge of the foam. Be careful you don't cut into your stitching, because if you do, then the zipper, the lining and what have you is all going to come adrift. Sometimes it takes a little bit extra just to trim off any extra bits. And you can see that's just taken any foam out, and you can see where the stitch line is, and there's no foam above that stitch line. I'm going to grab my iron because I haven't put that over. And my ironing pad, because I need that now. Not very prepared, sorry. So we now have our lining and our zipper and our exterior. What we're going to do is we're going to fold our lining over so that it's behind the exterior. So your zipper will be kind of sitting proud on the top there. Now you can finger press it down. Don't worry about pulling it, you've stitched it so it's not going anywhere. And then take your iron and press along that fold that you've just made. You need your lining to be right behind the main panel. I like to turn it over and make sure that the lining isn't bunched up at the back, and give it another little press just to ensure that everything's sitting where it needs to be. Don't worry about ironing over the top of your zipper. Nylon zippers are perfectly okay to be ironed over. If, however, you've chosen to use a metal zipper, do be careful because they get mighty hot, and 3rd-degree burns from metal zippers hurt. So we now have, you can see, we have half of a zipper installed. How accomplished do you feel now? What we're going to do now is we're going to top stitch along by the side of our zipper. Now we're going to do something that for quilters will seem familiar, for others maybe not so. We're going to bury our threads. So what we're going to do is we're going to have long threads on both the top and on the bobbin, and we're going to pop them out of the way. And I am going to top stitch along the edge from this point here where the zipper starts to halfway across my zipper tab. So I'm going to stop halfway across my zipper tab, and I'm going to start just where those teeth are at start. Make sure the other half of your zipper is out of the way. increase your stitch length a little. I like to stop top stitch at approximately 4. So top stitching just a little bit bigger. If you whatever seam stitch size you've used for your top stitching on your top and bottom panels, use the same size on this. So we're not going to backstitch at the beginning because we are going to bury our threads. We're not going to backstitch at the end because we're going to bury our threads. So let's just top stitch along the side of our zipper. Go slowly because you want it to look nice. And I'm top stitching at 1/8 of an inch here. Now when you get down towards that zipper pull again, the same thing applies. With your needle in and raise your presser foot, make sure that your zipper pull goes the other side of your stitching so that you don't go wonky when your foot hits the zipper pull. Raise your presser foot when you get to the end, pull your work out and cut so that you've got long threads at this end also. Now I'm using a self-threading needle because I'm too lazy to use ordinary needles and try and thread them. Self-threading needles are what my mum used to call blind man's needles. How many blind people sew? I don't know, but that's what she called them, and that's pretty much what I continue to call them. So I'm taking the thread from the top, I've put it onto the needle, and I'm going to push it through the next available hole. So I'm going back 1 stitch so that it's on the top thread comes out onto the back, and I'm going to pull that thread to make sure there's no loops on the top. I'm going to do exactly the same at the other end. Pushing that front thread through to the back. So now on the back you will have your bobbin thread and the thread that you just pulled through, and you can pop a couple of knots into that just to secure the threads. And you can either trim those off to about 1/4 of an inch, or if you want to, again, take your needle. You may have to do 1 thread at a time. I usually get both threads through. Lift up your lining and push both of those threads through so that they're actually between the lining and the foam, which means you'll have no little bits of thread ends inside of your pouch. And I know it's a tiny detail, but actually tiny details make for big differences in the quality of your finished product. If you're a quilter, if you're a quilter, then this is quite familiar to you. If you're not, then you may not be familiar with burying your threads. I have to say it's one of my pet peeves to see lots of little thread ends, and because I work quite a lot with faux leather, back stitching isn't really an option because it weakens the faux leather. So burying threads is something I do an awful lot. It's not an absolute essential. If you don't want to do it, please don't, but I just think it finishes off the inside of your pouch really nicely. So there we are. We have that line of stitching, and you can see that's on the inside, and we haven't got any sort of bulky bits at the end there. On the front of our work we have our line of stitching, and we don't have any back stitching or nasty bits at the ends that show. So that's one side of your zipper installed. That wasn't as hard as you thought it was going to be, is it? So I will come back to you in just a second because I'm going to go and grab a cup of tea and show you how we put the other side on.